I've spent most of my life doing things because I thought I was supposed to be doing them, or because I thought that they're the types of things that successful people do. And despite the fact that I certainly have been through several rounds of burnout in the pursuit of what I thought was successful, I generally would have still described myself as a pretty happy person overall, with a generally positive outlook on life. But it's really only been within the last year or so that I started to actually pursue my creative interests, not because I thought I was supposed to or expected to, but truly and solely because I wanted to. And in doing this, I've started to experience what true, all-encompassing joy feels like for, I think, the first time in my adult life. So in today's video, I want to talk about how choosing joy has changed everything for me within the past year. And while I talk about this, I'm going to be painting some loose watercolor botanicals inspired by some greenery that I collected from my backyard. So grab a cup of tea and a cozy blanket, or maybe go get your own art supplies and create something alongside me while we talk about this transformative power of choosing joy. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with my background, or maybe those of you who are just meeting me for the first time in this video, I think a little context about my life will help set the scene. And maybe there are some of you out there who will be able to relate to parts of my journey. These days, I'm in the early stages of building my art and content business, but I've only been doing this for the past year or so, and all the years leading up to this point have looked a lot different. Basically, I've spent my life being a huge people pleaser and a massive overachiever. I definitely resonate with the people online who talk about being put in the gifted and talented category from an early age, and how that has made things exceptionally confusing in adulthood. For as long as I can remember, I've been on a mission to be a high achiever. Even in preschool, when I was only 4 years old, I remember already wanting to prove that I could be the best reader in the class. I want to make it clear that I was never told by my parents or teachers that I was expected to be like this. This is just how I've always been. When I was young, I really loved being like this. I constantly sought out challenges, and I wanted to prove to myself, more than anyone else, that I could overcome them. This was super fulfilling to me, and as a kid, I definitely feel like I did live a truly joyful life. When I was little, I never felt like my achievements came at the expense of my joy and my happiness. Both my tendency to be a high achiever and my joy could exist together, and all was well. Eventually, as I got older and the academic challenges to which I was subjecting myself began to grow in both size and in frequency, this balance began to shift. I became a lot more aware of the external pressures to fit the mold that our society has defined as a quote-unquote successful person. Over time, I think the part of me that is just truly intrinsically motivated to do challenging things was kind of overshadowed by this societal pressure to do a very specific kind of challenging thing. So in my effort to prove to myself and to others that I could do hard things and that I could do them well, I started putting a lot of energy into doing things that our society widely puts on a pedestal as the epitome of success. Our society says that people who get good grades are successful. So I poured hours and hours into my coursework to ensure that I would come out at the top. Our society says that people who take challenging classes are successful. So I fit as many AP courses into my schedule as I could. Our society says that people who fill their time with extracurriculars are successful. So I had something going on nearly every day before or after school. Our society does not say that joy and happiness are prerequisites to success. In fact, it often looks down upon people who choose non-traditional routes, rooted in their own enjoyment and passions, like the arts. So as a people-pleasing overachiever, I stopped considering my own joy almost completely. Now, I don't want to make it sound like I was just miserable and sad all the time. Like I said earlier, I definitely did have many sources of happiness in my life. I just was not actively prioritizing these things in my day-to-day. I reached a point where doing things that brought me joy just for the sole sake of filling my cup felt like an indulgence, and oftentimes one that I convinced myself I couldn't afford. For many years, I continued on in this way and was always striving to show the world that I was successful. Many people might say that I accomplished quote-unquote success when you look at my academic awards and achievements, and maybe the list of bullet points with these big fancy words that fill my CV. But the reality is that my success came at the cost of my joy. And eventually I realized that that cost was higher than what I was willing to pay. When I graduated from my master's program, I finally left academia behind me for the first time in my memory. Though I had a full-time job lined up, like any good, successful overachiever would, it wouldn't start for another 3 months. This was the spring of 2022, and looking back on it now, what happened during those months was a crucial turning point in my life. Though I hadn't realized it, it was like I had built up this creative dam that had been collecting my creativity ever since I started prioritizing societal success over my own joy. My creativity hadn't disappeared. I had just been stashing it away for years and years. Once I left the constraints of the academic world and suddenly had no professors to impress and no gold stars to earn, it was like the floodgates broke open and all of that creativity was unleashed. For the first time I could remember, I was creating art regularly. I've always been creative and I used to dabble in pencil drawings, but only in the margins of my life. Drawing was one of those indulgences that I convinced myself successful people don't partake in. But now that I had all this time on my hands, I started painting all the time. My paintings weren't very good, and I didn't know the first thing about technique, but I was suddenly filled with joy. Painting gave me a purpose, unlike any of the academic pursuits that I was supposed to think of as significant and meaningful. It felt like the first time I allowed myself to do something just because I wanted to do it, and not because I was expected to. And it was a massive wake-up call for me, because I suddenly remembered what pure, unstructured joy really feels like. I became obsessed with finding people online who had developed successful careers with their art, and before long, I found my entire understanding of what success means to be completely dissolving with each story I heard about people living their dream creative lives. I remember so vividly how I started laying in bed at night with my head full to the brim of my dreams of all the possibilities that could come from my creative pursuits. This sensation in particular made me feel quite emotional because it was a feeling I hadn't had since I was a little kid. When I was in school chasing the societal definition of success, every night I went to bed completely exhausted. There were no creative thoughts dancing around in my mind, no dreams about my future life propelling me forward. It was just empty. I think that I had just convinced myself that that's just what adulthood is like. Those magical thoughts and feelings were all well and good when we were kids, but they just naturally go away as we get older. Well, trust me when I say that that does not have to be true. It might sound cheesy or impossible, but I promise you, ever since I spent those months away from what society defines as success and released my creative energy from the burden of that reality, I promise you that that magic has come back. Now, it would be very beautiful and romantic for me to tell you that I decided to fully embrace this new reality and quit the job I had lined up before I even started. to pursue this newfound creative dream. But unfortunately, that's just not my story. I did start that job, and in fact, I'm still working at that job now, because I decided that I needed time before I would be ready to dive headfirst into this new creative world. I left grad school with student debt and next to no savings. And given that I'm a pretty risk-averse person when it comes to finances, I decided I wanted to build in a bit of a runway before taking the plunge. I've been using this time to develop my creative skills, learn about creative entrepreneurship, and lay the foundations for my own business, and also to save as much money as I can. Despite the fact that I'm spending over 40 hours per week working at this demanding and creatively unfulfilling job, something in my core shifted when I encountered this all-encompassing joy that came from leaning into my creativity. Before this creative awakening, I thought my priority at my new job would be to hustle as hard as I had been throughout my entire academic career and to climb that corporate ladder at record-breaking speeds. But after feeling the joy and freedom that comes with embracing my own interests and cultivating my own dreams, I've entered a new era where I prioritize my own joy far above any notion of what success looks like in society's eyes. For me, from a practical standpoint, that has meant that I set very strict boundaries around my work schedule. Even though my bosses and coworkers will often be sending emails at 10 o'clock on weeknights or on the weekend, you will very rarely find me working outside of the hours that I'm expected to be at my desk. These days, instead of focusing on my desire to be recognized as the best at something that doesn't light me up inside, I intentionally prioritize my own joy every day. Now, I won't lie and pretend like this is super easy to do when balancing other full-time responsibilities. And in fact, I'm thinking about doing a whole separate video about building a creative business while working full-time. But this mindset shift has meant that I make time most days to paint, and I truly do something every day to move the needle forward on my creative dreams, even if it's only by a hair. There's such a massive difference between working towards your own dreams and working towards goals that you just feel like you're supposed to have. I finally recognized that society's vision for my success does not align with my own dreams. So I've let go of those expectations that have weighed me down for literally decades and have decided to let my own dreams propel me forward. When you start looking for it, you'll start to find that there are people all over the world who do not go to bed every night with dread for the next day, and who do not stare at the wall of the shower with a head full of nothing but exhaustion and empty thoughts. No, there are people who make the choice every day to live a life that fulfills them and to follow their own dreams. People who wake up every morning excited by the possibilities of the day and who fill their lives with things they actually want to be doing. Living like this is a choice, but when you've spent your whole life being fed this societal expectation of success, it can be really scary to choose joy over gold stars and perceptions of stability. But once you've had a taste of this real joy, it also feels almost impossible to not chase after that feeling. I truly believe that the best way for any of us to leave a positive impact on this world is to lean into those things within us that absolutely light us up. When we dedicate all of our time and mental resources to causes that don't actually align with our own hopes and dreams, I don't know if we'll ever really fulfill our full potential. I know that all of this can be easier said than done, and I myself am still in the early stages of figuring out how to make my dream a reality. But I promise that this mindset shift has been so powerful, and I really truly just want everyone in the world to experience the level of joy that I've found in leaning into my creativity. So my story is obviously still ongoing. So if you'd like to follow along and see how it unfolds, and also see if I'm able to follow through on my goal of taking this creative business full-time in 2024, I invite you to subscribe to my channel because I'm certainly going to be sharing every step along the way. If you're feeling extra generous, I also invite you to give this video a like because it actually really does make a big difference in helping get this video in front of other people. And I have a feeling that there are lots of people out there who could benefit from hearing this conversation about choosing joy. And really, I have so much more to say about this topic. So in addition to, making future videos about things like this, I also invite you to leave a comment and talk about what resonated with you, and maybe share your own story if you're comfortable doing that and if you have experienced something like what I talked about in this video. Oh, and before I go, one last thought, because my next video that I'm going to be putting out is going to be to celebrate hitting the milestone of 1,000 subscribers. So if that's one of you, thank you very much for being here. And I'm doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions for me about my journey, about my art style, or anything, feel free to leave them here and I might be able to get to them in that video next week. So if you enjoyed watching this video and you are also working toward your own creative dreams, I think you might also get value from this video here, where I walk through my plan to replace my current full-time income using these revenue streams that I'm trying to build up within my creative business. With that, thank you very much for being here, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Take care, everyone.